So with that, I would like to introduce and welcome CMLS Chair-elect and CEO of the largest multiple listing services in Utah, with almost 16,000 subscribers and 94% of the state. Please welcome Brad Belke and from UtahRealEstate.com. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks, Danae. So my opening seemed really dry compared to Marquee, so I decided to let's get wild up here, and we'll get the number of ties reduced from 4 to 1 for this panel. And so hopefully we'll be able to keep the energy flowing. But while we sometimes use the words collaboration and consolidation, they can be tough words as well. And this next section is about the honeymoon. What happens after you have a success or a win? And I thought about it a lot, and I thought, a lot of us in this room get some wins, right? We're able to work with others, help with consolidation, help with collaboration, but we also have a lot of losses. And I know personally you have successes and you have failures, and the failures really eat at you. We all think to ourselves, I feel so logical. This is such a logical business argument, and it makes sense logically for these organizations to work together, data share, come together. But then your logic to the other party may seem like a threat to a business model or a threat to survival. And so what we're going to do today is have 3 really fine gentlemen come up who have had some really great successes in using all kinds of different business models and tactics to get collaboration and consolidation to happen. So first I'd like to introduce to you Richard Haggerty. Richard is the CEO of the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors. Richard's one of the nice guys in the industry and really creative, and I've worked with him now, I think, for 10 or 11 years, so I'm proud to call him a friend. Up next, we have Jim Spear. Jim was recently named the CEO of the newly formed regional MLS in New York, and that's made up of the members of Multiple Listing Service of Long Island and the Hudson Gateway MLS. And they now have, I think, a measly 40,000 members, so it's a pretty small one. And finally, I'm pleased to introduce Jim Yockel. Jim serves as the CEO of the Greater Rochester Association. And Jim is also a CMLX3 graduate, so he went through the rigorous program here and is just a great addition to the CMLS family. So with that, I want to just get going with Jim. Jim, you've accomplished some great things with your neighboring associations and MLSs, and we don't often get to hear from the Greater Rochester Association. So I think what I'd love you to do is just, give us a quick glimpse into what you've done. Maybe tell us about one accomplishment and success that you're proud of.
Yeah, we've been working on, we're kind of like the anti-merger people. We've been working on a lot of partnerships, shared services and things for about 10 years. It started when the state association actually put together a talk about looking at a statewide MLS, and it didn't go very far, but the leadership in Rochester got together with leadership in Buffalo and Syracuse, we're right next door, and said, maybe we should keep talking about this. Maybe there's something we could do. And we met for a while. We put together a model that was pretty unique at the time, where we maintained 3 independent MLS organizations, but we created a common database with common rules, common data feeds, common core services that would serve the brokers and agents in the whole western half of New York State, but allowed us to maintain our independence. We're still competitors. We have different business models. We have different goals, but we have this overarching alliance that meets the needs of the agents.
Excellent. Richard, so it was big news, right? We just had a press release. We read it. It's exciting. Sometimes a scary venture. How did you go about approaching, or who approached who with the recent merger between your 2 entities, and what was the impetus for trying to make it happen?
Well, first off, I've got a confession. My name is Richard Haggerty, and I'm a blamer. I don't know what I'm going to do if I can't blame people. My staff, I'm sure, several of them are over there, are thrilled to know that I'm not going to be able to blame them anymore. But I blame Matt Cohen, actually. Jim and I were actually at state meetings about a little bit more than a year ago, last winter, and Matt did a presentation, and I'm sure many of you in the room have seen the map that he will throw up that has all of the MLSs across the country and how many there should be. And I'm sure all of you thought, you've gotten frustrated like I have. It's like, who's picked that magic number to indicate how few MLSs there should be around the country? Really, that should be the membership that does that. But I did leave that meeting. It's probably about the fourth or fifth or sixth time I'd seen that map. And I immediately approached Jim Spear, and I said, shouldn't we be talking? Isn't it time for us to at least have our leadership explore whether there are things that we can do together? And Jim actually was very receptive to it. We both approached our executive committees, and I really thought it would be a tough sell. And our leadership said, yeah, we should definitely be doing this. We should be talking.
Great. Jim, from your perspective, now we got Richard at Hudson Gateway, and now we have you at Long Island.
Absolutely.
Was the talk the same? Was it different? When you're dealing with a neighboring MLS that's a little bit smaller than yours, what's the perspective?
It was actually similar. There were some differences. If I could point out something real quick, if I remember correctly, last year when we all filled out these evaluations, we said how great it was. But I think there was a point that everybody said, no more merger talk, we're tired of it. So I was just so excited when I was asked to speak on mergers, knowing that you guys are all dying to hear all about them again. So, but here we go. So what we decided, it was a lot of the same points, but part of it was that we realized that if a regional was ever going to happen in our marketplace, it really had to start with us as the two big ones and then move out. There's some other good organizations around us, but it really had to start someplace. And quite frankly, when I went to speak to our directors about it, they were stunned because at our directors' meetings, there had been some talk in the past about maybe some data sharing, a joint consumer website possibly, but never a regional. So yeah, they were stunned. And I have 85 directors at our MLS. So at the same time, when I talked about it, I had 85 jaws drop all at the same time. I think when I said 85 directors, I saw a lot of jaws drop here too. But we did have 85 directors. And once they recovered, they discussed it and thought it was a great idea. So we formed a task force and to meet with the Hudson Gateway folks. Hired a consulting firm, which was Larson Skinner, who we both do legal work for. So they led us through the path. But our directors were very excited for it once they thought about it and figured it was the path to go down.
So, Jim Yockel, so we have two Jims up here. You have done different things, right? It's not necessarily always a merger or consolidation. What's the attitude going into it for you and for some of the ones that you've talked to?
Well, I think the good news is our collaboration with the Alliance led to a different way of thinking. And so we started looking at, well, how can we do this in different areas? And we run an association and an MLS. So the first one was, well, we need help with our advocacy program. So we approached a couple of our neighbors about putting a regional government affairs director position together that we would all support. The state ended up getting on board, and they actually hired that person and are expanding that program across the state. So we thought, wow, this is cool. What else can we do? And we put together leadership training with 5 associations and MLSs in our area. And that went really well. And the people in the training said, this is awesome. We should get our leadership to do this. So then we got our leaderships together, and they meet a couple of times a year to talk specifically about shared services. So it's kind of taking on a life of its own. And that leads to other people now approach us and say, hey, we saw what you did here. We've done a merger with a small association who's executive retired, and that went well. We set them up as a chapter. So another association whose AE was retiring said, hey, would you talk to us about what you did? We like that concept. We'd be interested. That didn't work out, but another association approached us the same way. And so I think we've built a reputation as we're good to work with. We're non-threatening. We don't want to take anybody over. What we do is try and create shared services that actually empower the people around us to be more independent and to be stronger competitors rather than put anybody out of business. And now people are seeking us out. And we just recently had an association come to us and say, we need to get out of the MLS business. Would you sell us service? Let us be independent, but manage us as a second level support. So I think the attitude is now, this is an opportunity to explore any partnership. We'll listen to anybody about anything. If it makes sense, we'll try it. And if not, we'll try and find a solution. But it's all about creating a market that works for everybody and empowering people to serve the agents, brokers, and ultimately the consumer.
Great. Real quick, one of the things that always gets people very nervous, and especially the staffs, is when two MLSs maybe are starting to talk, whether it's for shared services, whether it's for a consolidation or a merger. And with two pretty large organizations that you're coming together, Richard, how has staff reacted to the announcement?
I think with some trepidation. The only thing I can tell you is we tried to be as transparent as possible, but we also didn't have all the answers. This process did take about 1.5 years, which I think was pretty darn quick given the sizes of the organizations, the respective organizations. But at the same time, there is no certainty in life.
Right.
And what I kept on really emphasizing with the staff, I'd fill them in every step of the way. And Jim and I actually made sure that we were sharing the exact same information, but that there would not be any final answers until the deal was done. And even then, it's going to be a new entity. But I also really reassured them that it was their talent that had taken us this far, and having gone through several other mergers, those people stay on and add to the talent pool. So I think if you keep on emphasizing that we're really, you're going to be part of a bigger and more dynamic entity, I think that really helped.
Jim, obviously it's one perspective, and then you were telling me earlier when we were talking backstage that it's an interesting sort of way that you're doing the services initially. Can you just expound upon that?
Sure. Now, we'll start out. We did what Richard did. We went every step of the way. As soon as we had our first directors meeting where it was even brought up, we had a memo go to staff to let them know, told them to come and talk to me at any time. We signed a memo of understanding to go out. We had a staff meeting. We signed the deal. We had a staff meeting to make sure they knew. But what we're doing that Brad's referring to is there's actually an agreement in place that for a 3-year period, the regional MLS will pay the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors and the Long Island Board of Realtors to provide the support for it. So the regional is actually going to have a limited amount of employees, 5, I believe it is, and then if they're calling for customer service, they'll still continue to call Long Island Board of Realtors, have the same people answer the phone the same way at Hudson Gateway. So that's for a 3-year period, we will pay them for support. So when we've told our staff that, they liked it. Again, there's no certainties in the world, but they obviously like that idea. And as we talk to our membership, they really like it too, because that means today, if they're calling this phone number for support, they're going to call the same number for support and get the same good people answering that question. So again, it's a 3-year period. At the end of the 3-year period, the regional is free to do whatever they would like. It might make sense to continue that relationship. It might be a hybrid of some sort, but that gave the employees a lot of comfort right there.
And I think shared services is a topic that we're going to hear more and more about. The Arizona Regional MLS and serving Arizona, and Metro MLS in Milwaukee, they're doing shared services. They've entered into an agreement, and I think those partnerships are really important. And they also show people it's not always about a consolidation. It's not always about dissolving an entity. But if you're willing to work together, you can make some pretty incredible things happen. Yeah. And so when you get these 2 boards of directors or 5 boards of directors or whatever it is together, governance has been a big topic for the past couple of years at NAR, at our meetings. With 85 directors, Jim, how do you approach them and say, okay, we're going to change things up? What models do you look at?
To start with, you serve really good oatmeal in the morning, the meetings, people love that, so that helps out. But the thing that we did, first we chose a great task force to work with us and to make the presentations. But we understood that this is their baby too, the MLS. So this, excuse me, so this means a lot to them. So we presented to them a slide that showed how we're looking to utilize their talent in the future. That we know we're going to cut back from 85 to, we'll get to the governance in a bit, but it's really going to be 6 from Long Island, down from 85. So, but we want to let them know we still needed their input. We still needed their thoughts on everything. So we assured them we'll have MLS advisory groups and so on and so forth, so we can still get their input on things. And again, their fear was that they would not have anything to do with it anymore. There'd be this thing out there that they wouldn't have any input with.
And Richard, did you consider going up to 85 directors from Hudson Gateway?
Well, we had already had experience. We merged back in 2013 with another MLS, the Greater Hudson Valley MLS. And Brian Larson facilitated that merger as well. And he really emphasized this is your opportunity to shrink your governance, shrink your leadership, make it much more nimble. And we didn't listen to him. And this time around, I made sure we listened to him. And I think one of the things that really was very helpful to our process is with Brian and Mitch, they first got everybody to say, what are our goals? Because we really couldn't decide what we wanted to do going forward until we figured out what our goals were going to be. And based upon what the task force decided they wanted to achieve, they actually very quickly embraced the idea that they had to have a very nimble governance structure, which meant a lot fewer directors.
Jim, you are doing it differently, but when you are getting into the weeds of sometimes helping out, how do you handle board of director issues and dealing with directors who may be used to a certain way of doing business, and then having to explain to them, we still need you, but we have to do it. In order to make this work, we have to do it different.
I think we focus on, it's about building something better that works for a bigger group of people, and nobody is going to have exactly the same role, but if we do it right, it will be a better role. There's so much work, there's so much need for volunteers, there's so much need for staff work that we look at it as that we're trying to create something that will empower everybody involved to be more effective. And if you're doing a good job at something, we want to take advantage of it. And if we can support you in something, we'll give freely. And it takes the sting out of, well, we had 6 seats, now we only have 5. But you're going to be involved at a high level, and the goals are up here. And if we do the right things, we'll all come out way ahead.
All right, so we've got about a minute left, and I just wanted to say, take 10, 15 seconds and give everybody in here your best piece of advice for if they're considering collaborating or consolidating, or they have fears of either of the two. What would you say to those members of our audience? Richard, we'll start with you.
Have the conversation. I mean, that's where it all starts, and don't be afraid of the conversation. I kept on telling my members, it's not about me, it's about you. So you've got to have the conversation. Like Jim says, there are a lot of options out there. You've got to have a good conversation as to which options make the most sense for your members. And that's what it's all about. It's about servicing your members.
Jim.
And I agree. And it's important to right away let them know that we are all in this together. We're staff, you're volunteers, but we're all in this together. We didn't know what would happen with us when we began this process, which I think they appreciate the fact that we're the ones that pushed it forward. So everybody needs to understand we're all in this together and working towards that common goal.
Yep.
And finally, Jim?
I would agree. We're all in this together. We have to work together to succeed, but do it with respect, do it with an open mind, and understand that it may be comfortable for you, it's challenging or uncomfortable for someone else. So go in with respect, go in, listen a lot, and be open to opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our panel. Appreciate it.
Thank you.